Hello. This is going to be an unscripted, crude video about work and money. What I'm going to try to do here is give some general principles, some general ways of thinking for the younger guys out there that don't really have a lot of experience in getting jobs and creating a career for yourself. This is going to be my own advice and my own experience and ways of thinking about how to make money. Okay, practical video. I'm not talking about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is a very hard and very risky business. It depends on what kind of business you get into. Like real estate, you just have to have a lot of money and you have to have a good management company, basically. And you have to know someone who knows taxes. So this is really more for the employee side. How do you think about money? How do you think about where to go, what track to go on to get money? I want to make $100,000, you say, So how do you make $100,000? Well, you have to think about it in terms of time and base pay. You have to be able to calculate how much you're going to have net after taxes, after expenses, and everything else is taken out. And that is what you have at the end of the day. You'll hear a lot of people talk about how to save on taxes and how to save for retirement and investing and all that stuff. But this is about income. This is about how do you make money to invest in the first place. That's where this is going to start out with. So the scenario is you get out of high school. Let's say you get out of college. Let's say you get out of whatever it is that you're in as far as as a base training thing, and then you start doing something. You got to make money somewhere. That's where we're starting. A little background on me. If you've seen any of my videos, then you know I'm a registered nurse. I work in the healthcare field, and I can talk a lot about registered nursing and how that works. But this really applies to any field. This general conceptual principles really applies to any field. So you get out of high school, and what do? Where do you go? Aside from all the explanations I could do about why I'm making this video, the basic understanding that I have now, which I really wish I had known when I started out with my working life and my career, is barrier to entry. So anytime you make money, you have to convince somebody to give it to you. You can't make money. It doesn't work that way. You don't make money. You collect money from other people. There's no money tree, as they say. You have to get someone to give it to you. That's just the way it is. So how do you get people to give you money? Well, you have to trade something for it. People do not just give you money unless you're a fraud. You call them up on the phone, cold call, say, hey, man, I got this really awesome thing. Give me some money. So they give you some money and you don't give them anything in return. Well, they're expecting you to get something in return. Well, the transaction there is actually, you're expecting them to give you something in return. That's how it works. You have to trade something. Trading is how it works. So what do you trade? You get out of high school, you get out of college. What are you going to trade an employer or a customer in order to get them to give you their money? So what this video is really about is about how to get a job. How do you get an employer to give you money? You have to trade them something for it. The way you get a job is that you have to have something to trade. That is called, and the general idea that I call is barrier to entry. The requirements of the job are whatever it is that they need done in order to pay you. So let's say, for example, I'm an RN. I have a couple credentials that limit those jobs to be given to people who only to people that have my credentials. It is actually against federal law for anyone else outside of an RN. Somebody who, all people that have a registered nursing license, those are the only people that are legally allowed to hold my position and people and other positions that require an RN. So in this world right now, generally speaking, we have a very regulated world. You can't just have a driver's license and go get a trucking job. You have to have a CDL. You have to have a certain amount of experience, and you have to have a certain, training credentials that allow you to legally do that job. So in my case, I have a registered nursing license. If you are doing my job and you don't have a registered nursing license, the hospital you're working for could be fined big time. And of course, you'll lose your job because you don't have a registered nursing license. You will be fired immediately. Yeah, obviously. If you are doing your job and then the hospital finds out that you didn't have your license, which expired yesterday, and you come into work that day, they will send you home until you have an active license. It is illegal for anyone without an active nursing license to do my job. So the barrier to entry to my job is absolutely defined. So that cuts the worker pool down. So the people I'm competing against to get the jobs in nursing, which, there's lots of jobs, there's a lot of demand for us. The worker pool is pretty condensed, and it's absolutely defined. A doctor is not allowed to practice nursing. Interesting. Anybody who does not have a nursing license is not allowed to do my job. And that is how healthcare works, especially because it's a very regulated field, healthcare. Everything has to be approved by somebody. Some organization has to approve everything. So in terms of barrier to entry, there's a high bar, and it's absolute. You don't get to skirt the bar of having a nursing license. It's the same with medicine. If you have to have a physician's license, you have to be approved within your state, and you have to have that license in order to practice medicine. So it works that way in every field. So let's say you want to be an engineer. You have to be approved. I'm not really sure how that works, but let's just for time's sake. So I didn't do a whole lot of research on this. So I'm assuming that it's state regulated for engineering. I think so. You have to have a state license as an engineer or some kind of credential that allows you to sign off on whatever it is that your company's doing. If you don't have it, then the company cannot stand behind your work. That's how it works. You have to have some kind of credential. So that's what you're trading in a lot of these new jobs that are under these regulatory schemes nowadays. If you want to be a trucker, you have to have a CDL, or you have to have a CDL-A, or you have to have a CDL hazmat, or whatever it is that you're driving. You have to have some kind of credential to trade to get the job. So if you think of it that way, let's say you're in high school, let's say that you're in college, and you're thinking about, where do I go from here? There are some jobs that don't require this. Let's say that you want to be a journalist. A lot of times they'll just require a certain degree. So back to the point. So you're in high school, you're in college, you're about to break out, you're about to go somewhere. You have to know what the requirements are for the jobs that you're going to be going after, especially if you're in high school. You're about to be paying a lot of money for a college degree. You have to be thinking long term. You have to be thinking about what the barrier to entry into a job is going to be. What you have to come to the table with to trade for the money that they're going to be paying you to do the work that they need. Okay, it's not about the effort. Okay, jobs that just pay you for the effort that you provide the company, those are basically non-barrier to entry jobs, like McDonald's. Some jobs just don't have any kind of credentialing scheme that's required. Entrepreneurship basically doesn't have any credential. You have to have a business license in a lot of states. I don't know. There's a lot of various regulatory requirements for entrepreneurship, but it varies. Basically, what I have understood over my years of trying to set up some kind of career, the way that you need to think about this is barrier to entry. You have to start early, and you have to start thinking about it way in advance, and you have to build up this credential that you can trade for a job that they're going to be paying you money to do. You have to trade that barrier to entry requirement. Then you start putting the effort in. Okay, they're paying you for the effort, but in order to be able to be paid for the effort that you're going to be giving them, you have to have something to trade before that. That's the barrier to entry. That's the first step that you have to be thinking about. Well, all through high school, all through college, you're building up some kind of a history, some kind of a work history, essentially. And then when you get out of college and then you go apply for a job somewhere in your field, whatever it is that you're trying to do, you have to have a back history that you come to the table with. Okay. The good thing about college is that it's basically free time that you spend to build up your resume. You don't have to be going 9 to 5. You can make mistakes. That's the benefit of college. You can build up some kind of credentialing network of some kind of, you network with your fellow students, you network with your fellow, with your professors and all that stuff. And then you have some kind of a history, some kind of a portfolio that you're putting together. You go out and you apply for a job and you give them this portfolio of stuff that you have. That's a lot of times why they have internships. You have some kind of a back history that you can come to the table with, and they can say, okay, you meet our barrier to entry. And so now we will give you the opportunity to trade your effort for this paycheck. Okay, so that's the way you need to think about it. Every day you go to school, if you've never done it before, if you never thought this way, every time you go to school, every time you go to take a test, you have to be thinking, I'm making my portfolio, I'm making my resume in order to trade that for a job in the future. If you think that way, that will be a great start for your working life. Now, how do you make money? Basically, you have to. This is not going to be nice. It's not gonna sound nice when I get to the end of it, but you basically have to have a flawless record. If you have a big ding on your work history, it's not going to go well for you. You have to think. You can't show up to work one day, get pissed off, throw stuff, throw shit, hit people. You can't talk dirty, talk nasty to people. You have to keep your head down. You have to stay on the low and network with your fellow employees, and you have to stay on people's good side. Okay, there's no way of getting around that. You have to be a politician, and you have to have a flawless record in order to continue to make money. That's just the way it is. And as an employee, and like I said, I'm just talking about employee from the employee side. I'm not talking about from the employer side. I'm not talking because they have their own requirements. They have to make payroll. They have to stay in profit. They have to keep up with all the regulatory agencies that govern their business. They have to stay on top of the taxes, whatever. So as far as employees, just employees, you have to try to maintain a flawless record. You have to show up on time. If you're in college right now, make it a practice to get to class on time as if you're clocking in. Because let me tell you, as a nurse, if I'm late, not only will I get yelled at by my manager, I will be basically holding over somebody in order to go home, because they can't go home until someone comes to relieve them, because they're patients. They can't just walk away from their patients. Somebody has to be in charge of those patients at all times, 24/7. So if I'm late, I'm backing them up. So the effect that you have on other people needs to be in the back of your mind as well. So you want to try to maintain a flawless record. And if you get into the habit of maintaining a flawless record, it's not just, I'm never tardy to class. Hoorah, look at me, I'm special. No. You have to be thinking about this long term. So making money requires generally that you have a flawless record in order to continue to make more money as you go throughout your career. So, I don't know, I'll give you a couple profiles. Looking back on my working life. So I'm a nurse, and I was a commercial diver before. So as a commercial diver, what's that like? Well, once you've broken out, and when I say broken out, I mean that you've put in your time as a tender. They call it a tender diver. What you do is you're basically on the deck of the boat. You're moored up to, I don't know, I was in the Gulf of Mexico. So in the Gulf of Mexico, you're working as a support company for the oil and gas industry. So our job was pretty varied. We would actuate valves. A lot of it was hooking valves up. A lot of it was dredging, which is where you take this really heavy duty water hose and you'd go down there and you'd shoot a heavy duty high pressure spray of water underwater, and you would push out mud from the bottom and you'd create this trench. Sometimes you'd be looking to uncover a valve, or you'd sometimes be looking to uncover something, and you'd dredge out stuff. Other things that you do is hooking up pipes. You'd actuate valves. Sometimes you do a pipe repair. You do salvage, which is where you go down there and you'd pull stuff off the bottom. You clear out, fishing nets. There's a lot of stuff you do. Finding pipes, a lot of it's pipe work. Sometimes it's hazmat, cleaning up oil spills. You're working as a support to the oil and gas industry. So the oil and gas industry says, we need something done, and it needs to be underwater. And so we either need a dive team or we need an ROV, which is a remotely operated underwater vehicle, which is basically a submarine, which is remotely controlled. So that's what diving is. You need something done underwater, you need a diver, generally. What I did, I went to a dive school. And generally, you can't get into diving without a credential. It's called an ADC card. If you've ever heard of or thought about getting into the commercial diving industry, all you need is an ADC card. Nothing else. They'll try to sell you on these extra credentials, which literally mean jack shit. They mean absolute jack shit to the diving industry. Okay, I paid about, I don't know, 40,000. Yeah, I got ripped off big time because I paid for all these extra credentials, which mean absolutely nothing. There's this community college down in Morgan City, Louisiana. If you ever think about going into diving, and there's another community college over in California somewhere that offer this ADC card. That is all you need. If you go to any of these other profit-making schools, you will be ripped off, I promise. Because these community colleges charge basic tuition like any other community college, and they're cheap. That's the way you want to go if you've ever thought about commercial diving. With the drop in oil prices, I don't know how many jobs there are anymore. I was in about a decade ago. The long and short of it is all you need is an ADC card. That's your barrier to entry. Once you get that ADC card, you can get hired, depending on how many jobs there are available. So I had my ADC card. I went to this I think it's called Dive School International or whatever in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I went to school. And I don't know, it was like 4 months or something. Where you went, they have their own dive tanks. You go out on the river and you have to swim against the current. You wear the hard hat. You learn how to work an umbilical. You learn how to tend. You learn how to do some basic stuff like using a pneumo hose, which is basically an air hose that's in your umbilical. An umbilical. That is just a special word for a bunch of tubes and pipes that are duct taped together. So if you don't have any clue of what I'm talking about, it's called commercial diving. Commercial diving is as opposed to something. Okay, it's commercial diving. You have scuba diving, and you have snorkeling, essentially, and you also have saturation diving. Surface diving, saturation. Everything has an other, which it's not, right? And that's how words work. So when I say commercial diving, it's an umbrella term for all things that are not scuba, essentially. Surface diving, you're hooked to an air compressor, a non-oil air compressor, and that air tube is hooked into something called a diver's helmet or a hard hat. Some people call it different things. Usually, the Kirby Morgan dive helmets are made of fiberglass, and they have a big faceplate that you can see out of, and it has a comm system, and it has a secondary regulator on it, just like a scuba diver mask. And you put that on, you have this neck dam, they call it. It's basically a neoprene neck seal that hooks into your hard hat. You lock it shut. So that's the modern way of doing it. You might have seen that A Few Good Men or something, whatever it was, that movie with Cuba Gooding Jr. He goes down, he's got this really big heavy duty thing, this big steel hat, and he's got this big suit with their lead shoes or something, and they go down there. That's the old way of doing it. In modern times, you have a weight belt and you have your diver's helmet, and you just basically wear coveralls, and that's essentially what you're wearing when you go down on a job. So that's what commercial diving is. You go down there, you have tools, and you're hooked up to this umbilical, and you go underwater, and you do stuff, whatever it is that the job requires, and then you come back up. If you're down deep, which is generally deeper than 50 feet, you have to decompress, and that's what tenders do. Tenders run the chamber. That was a lot of what the job was. So a diving operation, the diver gets suited up, the tender helps him get suited up, puts on the hat, locks in the neck dam, he jumps in the water, the tender will hold the umbilical. That's basically our job during the diving operation. he'll let the tender will let out the umbilical. He'll pull it up and as much slack as the diver needs. And then once the job is done, the tender will basically pull the diver off the work, pull him up to the surface. The diver will jump in the chamber and we'll close it, and then we'll basically push a bunch of air into this chamber, which is basically a big tin can, and we'll let off the pressure at certain intervals, certain time intervals, until he's done something called off-gassing, which, if you've ever heard of the bends, what goes on is understanding decompression is based on understanding gas laws. Gas laws, dissolve gases in liquid, help you understand how this works. But long and short of it is, if you're at a deep depth, you're breathing high concentration air. That high concentration air, which is, mostly nitrogen, gets dissolved into your blood. So at depth, because you're breathing all this high concentration air, all that air is getting dissolved into your blood. Once you relieve the pressure, that is, if you're coming up too fast, then what'll happen is that the air that's dissolved, the gas that's dissolved into your blood, will come out of solution, and it'll create these air bubbles in your blood throughout your body, and that can be deadly. You can have clots, you can have a lot of things, but most of what it causes is a lot of really bad pain. And so to avoid that, you have to come up slowly. You have to be under compression. You have to be in an environment that's pressurized, and then you have to let off the pressure slowly. And so what you have to do is you have to breathe air at lower compression over time, and eventually what happens is that high concentrated air that's in your blood will get pushed out. You'll breathe it out, right? So the importance of the compression chamber cannot be overstated, because you can kill somebody if you bring them up too fast. So the tender will run the chamber. So what is a tender? A tender is somebody who gets out of dive school, goes into the industry, and they do their time. Okay, it's an apprenticeship, if you want to think of it that way. In the Gulf of Mexico, generally, it was about 3 years that they wanted to do tender diving. Sometimes they'll let you dive, especially inland, because nobody wants to do the inland jobs. I got most of my dives inland. We call it mud diving. You go down there and, a lot of it was salvage. We'd pull stuff off the bottom. So you do that for about 3 years. I didn't stay on for that long. I found out about nursing, found out that you get paid a lot more, so I went to nursing. So as far as diving, once you do your 3 years of diver tender, you do something called breaking out, which means that now you're a diver and you get to do diving exclusively. You get paid pretty well once you do that, because you get paid per foot after 50 feet. Per dive, so it's basically a big per diem, because you generally only do like 1 or 2 dives, because it can really mess you up if you get all that extra air dissolved into your blood. You have to decompress over all the time. It can mess you up over time, so you don't do too many dives. So if you're going down 200 feet, then you're getting $150 for that dive, plus your base pay, plus any overtime. We were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, so you can think about that's a lot of overtime plus those bonuses. And I was only getting like $17 an hour. So you come home, you get a lot of money at the end of the day. But so if you ever think about commercial diving, it's a pretty good industry to get into. It's a lot of fun. It's cool guys that you're working with. It's a great environment. It's definitely male-dominated environment, which is it's great compared to a lot of other industries. So if that's something you want to do, that's a great option, in my opinion. And you can do it. There's no age limit. Like I said, avoid the commercial schools and just go with the community colleges. There's like 2. There's not very many. And I'm not sure how the job market is for divers nowadays in the Gulf of Mexico, but they also have inland divers, inland dive companies. So you can check that out online. I might leave some links for stuff like that in the description if you're interested. But anyway, that's commercial diving. You get paid pretty well, and it's a pretty good gig. Depends on what your history is. It's not much of a career, I gotta say, until you get into saturation. Saturation diving means basically that you're staying under compression. You live inside the chamber for a period of time until basically the job is done or they need to switch divers out. So you stay in saturation. You're staying where your blood is saturated, essentially, if you want to think of it that way, with high pressure gas or high concentration gas. You don't off-gas it, and you breathe something called heliox, which is helium mixed with oxygen, which is a non-volatile gas, which is a lot easier on the body to breathe at high concentrations for long periods of time. Makes you talk like Daffy Duck, which is kind of funny. So yeah, that's essentially what commercial diving's like. You live in a boat. It's like probably a lot of the movies you've seen. You live in a boat. You live under deck. You have this little bunk space, and if you don't like close quarters, it's probably not a good job for you. But it's a lot of fun, and it can be definitely very rewarding over time. Like I said, the pay, you're not going to be making huge amounts of money. You're not going to be making lawyer pay for one of the big firms or whatever. But it's a great place to go if you don't want to worry about all the bullshit, impressing people. When you go to a job, you have to show up early and no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're not there early, I got yelled at one time because I showed up on time. They were like, you have to be here at least 20 minutes early, and I made sure I was early from then on. You absolutely have to show up on time, which means early, and you have to go out and work. If you're there and you work and you take instruction and you just do the damn job, you'll be fine. And that's what it's a lot like construction, I imagine. I've never actually worked construction. I did like a week, I guess, I did some trim work just as like a summer thing with a small local company who was building houses. But and that was like that too. If you show up, you do the work, you get paid and go home. That was essentially the life. And diving, it's great. I'd recommend it to anybody who is interested in diving, whatever. So went into nursing. I found out about that you can make a lot more money, and there's some other benefits too. You own your credentials. Okay, as an ADC diver, you're kind of limited in where you can go. As a nurse, I can go anywhere, literally anywhere, and get a job. The job market is a never-dying job. You can basically not be unemployed unless you're unwilling to move. The entire country is your market. Nursing can be very rewarding, but it can also be very huge pain in the ass. Okay, let's be honest. It's a huge pain in the ass. It's a female-dominated environment. No bones about it. Female-dominated environment. So how do you get into nursing? There's two barriers to entry to getting a nursing job. One is, in general, you have to have a college degree. There are some places where you can do something called a certificate, but those are dying. I think there's very few of those left in the country that are certified to allow you to sit for the board test. But what it all comes down to is you have to have a nursing license. Like I said, it's illegal for you to practice nursing without a nursing license, an active nursing license. If it expired today, you can't go to work today. So generally what you'll do, barring all the other possibilities, which are very few, you will go to school, a nursing school. And then once you've done all your stuff to get your degree, you'll get your degree, and then you'll sit for something called a board test, or the NCLEX, National Clinical Licensure Exam. You'll take this test, which basically tests whether you went to school or not. And then once you've passed your test, you'll get your nursing license. Once you have your nursing license, you can apply to any hospital, essentially, or any doctor's office that requires this nursing degree. There's other things too, like I work in dialysis. I work for a dialysis company, not going to say which one, but that requires a nursing license, the way that I do it. Not all jobs in dialysis require a nursing license, but the one that I do does. So there's a lot of different options. You can teach nurses. You can get other credentials to boost up your stuff and teach that way. You can write, or you can help to write textbooks. You'll need more credentials. As you go forward, if you want something other than bedside nursing, you're going to have to boost up your credentials. So that's a barrier to entry. So your first barrier to entry is getting a nursing license. Then you can apply, and then you can make money. If you want to do something else, let's say that you want to write a textbook, well, you generally need a PhD if you want to pursue higher, more advanced levels of nursing practice, then you're going to have to get something called a nurse practitioner's license, which is an advanced practice nursing license. There's other avenues like CRNA, certified registered nurse anesthetist. What they do is they're essentially anesthesiologists with limited scopes of practice in a lot of states. I'm not going to go into all the specifics on scopes of practice, but essentially what you're doing the job of an anesthesiologist for one patient. Anesthesiologists can do more than one patient they can supervise, essentially. They have greater latitude in what they can do. But your job as a CRNA is to do the job of an anesthesiologist, which is where you put people to sleep during surgery. It's a very competitive thing to get into. Once you get into it, you're generally making between $150,000 and $200,000 a year. In nursing, the wages are they're so varied across the country. I remember when I was just getting out of nursing school, I was in Louisiana, and the starting pay down there was like $17 an hour. Really, really shitty. So I don't know what anybody who's listening to me knows about wages in different industries. I don't know what the wages are like in your industry, but in my opinion, nursing pay is pretty damn good. So there's a lot of different avenues in nursing. You can work at a hospital, you can work at a doctor's office, you can work as a traveler. I've done travel nursing. I've worked at hospitals. I've worked at, like I said, I'm working in dialysis now. Each one pays differently, and they pay for differently for different reasons. In agency nursing, you're getting a cut of the total pay that the hospital is paying your agency. The agency takes between 40 and 60%, and then you get whatever it is that you signed up for. Generally speaking, you're going to be making $40 to $80 an hour as a travel nurse. That's just being general. Very general. And it works differently. Some places, some agencies will pay you like a certain amount per day for housing, which is, they call it a stipend. And you can make a shit ton of money for the stipend, and they'll pay you like $25 an hour or something, plus overtime if you work overtime. But the big payout that you generally get for an agency nurse is with the stipend. If you work local agency, they'll pay pretty well. It depends on your agency. But if they don't give a stipend, they'll pay pretty well. In one market that I worked, it was like $42 an hour, $50 an hour. That was pretty average. And then if you work 50 miles away from your home base, then you get big old tax credit. They'll only tax a small amount of your total pay. So you get a really good benefit there. So that's basically the pay scheme. Now, if you work at a hospital as a staff nurse, you get a base pay, and then you generally get a differential if you work certain shifts. So if you work night shift, you get a differential, which is an additional number of dollars per hour. One hospital I worked at, it was like $7 an hour boost if you work the night weekends. Another hospital I worked, I heard it was like $15 an hour boost. So it just varies so much that it's hard to say what your average wage is as a nurse. But and there's other ways that you can make money too. From what I understand, when I talk to surgical nurses, the way that they boost their pay is they go hospital shopping. They'll work at one hospital, they'll work for like their 2-year requirement, and then they'll go to another hospital. They say, I have so much experience, I want this wage. And then the hospital will negotiate, and they'll say, okay, because surgical nurses are in pretty high demand, and it's hard to find generally surgical nurses with a good amount of experience. So once you have that barrier to entry, again, that requirement to get the job, then you can negotiate based on your experience. So that's generally how nursing works as far as pay goes. As far as the work is concerned, can I recommend nursing? I don't know. I really don't know if I can recommend nursing. You really have to know what you're getting into before you start, because it's a long-ass process to get into it. So as far as credentials, like I say, generally need a college degree. Right now, you can still get the 2-year degree nursing, which is called the ADN, or Associate Degree Nursing. And then there's a bachelor's you can go for, and that's generally being required. They're starting to move toward requiring everybody to have a bachelor's degree. On top of that, you have to take your board test. Okay, like I said. So once you have your BSN, lovingly known as bullshit nursing, your bachelor's degree, bachelor's of science in nursing, Once you have that, you really can't go any higher as far as just basic nursing. And also you can't go any higher than getting your nursing license. That's the minimum requirement. That's what everybody has. Okay, so when you're competing against somebody to get a job, how do you compete? There's something called certification. So I've had my certification in critical care, which is a CCRN, critical care registered nurse. So if I went to a job and I said, they need a critical care nurse, somebody who has had critical care experience, and it's me versus somebody else, and I have my CCRN, then I'll get the job generally because I have some kind of credential to prove that, I qualify, I have experience. So as far as, competition, once you have your nursing license, that's how you can move your way up the ladder. You can get extra credentials. Credentials in nursing is everything. Everything. It doesn't really matter who you know. Unlike the corporate world where, having this CEO's stamp of approval, in general, you still need letters of reference. You still need good annual reviews. You can't have any dings on your record, and you certainly can't have some kind of a state board of nursing problem. Generally, all you need is your credentials. So you show your credentials, you show yourself off, and you say, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm friendly, and I'm clean cut. All those barriers to entry, like everything else, plus the credentials part. And then, you're basically a shoo-in if they need a nurse. If they need a nurse, they'll take you, unless you're asking for too much money, and you won't negotiate. So that's essentially how that works. So what's the job like? The job is very specific to the area in which you're working. However, that comes with a caveat. If you're a specialty, it varies a lot. If you're a bedside nurse, it's the same shit everywhere, no matter where you go. I've worked critical care, I've worked the floor, I've worked step down, I've worked telemetry, I've worked basically everywhere but the ER. But I've floated to the ER, so I know what it's like. ER is pretty nice. All you got to do basically is draw labs, insert, start IVs, take vital signs, do basic assessments, and, follow their procedures. When you go to the floor, it's basically the same shit. And when I say shit, I mean shit. Yeah. Okay. So my right index finger has been in so many assholes. It's embarrassing. You deal with a lot of fecal matter. You deal with a lot of human waste products, urine, blood. You deal with a lot of stuff that can get you infected. You deal with a lot of very dangerous drugs. You deal with a lot of narcotics. You do a lot of stuff. And so, if you're squeamish, or you can't trust your gloves, then it's probably not the thing for you to do bedside nursing. I did my dues. I've been a nurse for about 8 years now. I've got some experience now. I kind of know what I'm talking about now. So if you're ever thinking about, what track should I take? If you want to make money and if you want to have a guaranteed stream of income, nursing is a great option. Not because it's fun, not because it's, it's rewarding in some ways. When you can explain a surgery to a patient who has, brain cancer, when you can explain and help people understand what's going on in the hospital environment, who's never been in the hospital environment before, it can be very rewarding, to be honest. You can see some shit that, you'll never see unless you work in the hospital all the time. Fresh craniotomies. This is where this person has had part of their cranium dissected, pulled out of their head after they've cut open their skin, right? The doctor cuts open their skin in surgery, peels it apart, cuts off a part of their skull, pulls the skull out. A lot of times they'll insert it into their abdomen for safekeeping and sterility, and they'll cut out or relieve the pressure or whatever it is that they're trying to do, or pull off the blood that's seeping out inside the brain, and then they'll sew them up. This is a fresh craniotomy that'll come up to the floor, and then they'll have to wear a helmet to protect the area. But what's interesting is that you can feel the brain pulsate if you touch the surgical site after it's healed up. Obviously, you don't want to touch a fresh craniotomy, but after a while, because they'll be like this for a while to ensure that the pressure is relieved, because once you've cut into the brain, you'll have a lot of inflammation, so they don't want the pressure to build up. So that's why that they'll cut off the part of the cranium, leave it off, and then they'll sew them up that way, and then eventually they'll put the cranium back on. But you can actually touch the brain, the skin covering the brain, and you can actually feel it pulsate, which is really interesting. In nursing, you'll see a lot of interesting experience. You'll have a lot of interesting experiences that you can't get anywhere else. If you're looking for experience, you're looking to understand a lot about the human body, your own human body, and to expand your understanding about healthcare and everything else. Nursing is a great place to go. Now, in my opinion, the worst part about nursing is nurses. There are so many assholes. Oh my God, it is just mind-boggling how difficult it is to work with a lot of nurses. You'll get the catty bitches, you'll get all this shit, and the only way to avoid them is just to keep your head down, not talk to anybody, and pick and choose who is safe to talk to, because they will fuck you over. There's something in nursing called eating your young. It's a phenomenon, they call it, and it's well known. So you'll get a new nurse that gets on the floor and they'll start their job, and then the other nurses that have been working there a while will try to fuck with them. They'll try to mess them up. They'll watch what they're doing, see a mistake, and then they'll report it to the nurse manager. Yeah, I've had that experience. It's not a fun experience. Now that I've had experience, that was like a long time ago when I first started. But now that I've had experience, I know how to call them out. It's a very hard environment to deal with your coworkers, because you have to smile, you have to be nice, and you have to be friendly to everybody, no matter what they're doing to you, unless you want to be an asshole, and then you can fuck with them. I've never actually tried it, don't have any interest in trying it, just because I can't be bothered to deal with drama. And of course, let's not forget that, I am a male. Let's just say that being an asshole as a male is very different than being an asshole as a female. Females get a lot of deference in nursing. If I tried to start playing their games, it's not looked very highly upon by anyone, especially managers. So I'm at an extreme disadvantage of it. So I basically just have to keep my head down and try to be as professional as possible. So that's about as far as it goes with that. So yeah, you just have to watch your own ass. But anyway, the nursing environment is a problem because of the nurses. You'll hear nurses complain about patients, but I'm like, I really have no reason to complain about patients. They're there. You have to understand what they're there for. A lot of times, you get the patients, the odd one out that's like a frequent flyer, and yeah, they'll piss you off because they know how the things work, and they'll complain and they'll throw things at you. I've been kicked in the face once or twice. And then you'll get these gigantic land whales. And when I say land whales, I'm talking about 1,000 pounds. 1,000 pounds was my biggest patient. Yes, they did weigh them on the truck stop. They did have to have an MRI. Guess where they went? They went to the zoo. They went to the zoo to get an MRI. Because, they have huge MRIs for the elephants. Well, we have elephants. And so that was interesting. You'll have these gigantic fat ass people, and you'll have to clean them up, and you'll find shit in their folds. Like somebody told me they found a ham sandwich in somebody one time. I found maggots in one of my patients. It was another one. They were 800 pounds. They lived in decrepit, horrible conditions. They came in with spiders and bed bugs all over themselves. Yeah, nasty fucking people sometimes. And then other people where like I had this doctor patient. This doctor had a spinal surgery done, and trying not to get too technical with my verbiage. What they had to do was they had to replace one of the bones in their spinal column, and they replaced it with a cadaver bone, which is a bone pulled out of a dead person. And what happened? You'll have stuff called osteoclasts, which are basically small cells which eat away at bone, and this helps. Not getting into the technical, but anyway, what happened is that bone dissolved. So think about that. Having one of your spinal bones dissolve and your spine collapses to a minor extent. It collapsed where that bone was. Not fun. And this person was I think they were a urologist, but they were there as a patient, and they had to have this surgery, this back surgery. And so they gave me some of their stories. They were talking about, some of their history. And so interesting stories like that, it can be a very rewarding and a very pain in the neck field to get into. But the most important thing about nursing is the money. Of course, it's a job. We go there for the purpose of making money. If you want a guaranteed if you want a guaranteed employment situation where recessions, it doesn't matter honestly what's going on in the economy. You will have a job. You might not get the job you want because, in the market you want, but by and large, you'll be able to find a job somewhere. There's a lot of variation. Like over in California, you can't have any more than 4 patients. Not the case in all markets. Like the first job I had 8 patients, up to 8 patients, and that was pretty average, honestly, because that floor was very understaffed. So you have 8 patients, and that's a pretty heavy workload, let me tell you. And other places, you'll have a union. California, very well known for unionized nursing staffs. Maryland, I think they have unions. DC, I know they have unions. There's a lot of variation in markets. Like I said, the further south you go, the less money you'll make. The further north you go, the more money you'll make. So anyway, that's nursing in a nutshell, I guess. And as far as making money, if you're willing to travel, I would suggest anybody who's just starting out in their career, in their working life, once you get out of high school, once you get out of college, whatever, always be willing to travel. Always be willing to uproot. Never confine yourself to one area, because you have to go where the money is. The best thing to do in any work environment, no matter what job or what career track you take, the best thing to do is to stay mobile, because you can always go where the money is. Now it depends, if you have a gig with a local company and they pay you really well and you don't see that company ever going out of business, it doesn't really matter. Buy a big house and settle down or whatever. But by and large, the best thing that you can do as an employee is to be able to stay mobile, being able to go where the money is. I've heard $80 an hour is not hard to make in California as a travel nurse. Sometimes there's something called strike nursing. Strike nursing is where you go in to fill in when there's a strike in the hospital. The nurses aren't happy, or the negotiations have broken down for the union contract, and so the nurses will go on strike, the picket lines, the whole bit. Just like in the airport, just like in the airlines, the captains and the pilots are airline pilot union. And so they picket and all the flights are canceled or whatever. Same with nursing, But the thing is, unlike flights, which can be canceled, you can't just cancel patients. Patients have to be taken care of by law. The hospital would have to shut down and transfer every patient out until the strike is over. So that's just not feasible. So they will, if you have your credentials in line and you go out there, you make $10,000 in a month, they will pay whatever it takes to get their patients taken care of. And so, the nurses that are there striking are not going to be happy about it. They don't like you. But and you won't get any training when you get to the floor. But you can make a lot of money in nursing. That's really the takeaway. I don't know. I hope that this has helped somebody to, have a general idea of what to do when you get out in the working world. So to sum up, basically what you're looking to do is to meet the barrier of entry to whatever field you're trying to get into. So if you think about it this way, if you break it up into segments, take all the jobs that have no barrier to entry. I'm talking about the burger flipping jobs. I'm talking about the construction laborers. I'm talking about the roughnecks that work in the oil field, janitor, all these different fields that have no barrier to entry. And, you could just find a job and sign the application and get hired. But you're competing against the lowest rung of the economic society. So they're not going to pay you well because there's so many people available to do those jobs. The better paying jobs will have a higher barrier to entry. So if you're in college right now, look at class as a training ground for you to practice keeping a clean record, to build up a resume. If you have perfect attendance, you're not going to get a trophy for getting perfect attendance, but think about it this way. That is real life. Perfect attendance is real life. That's just the way it is. You don't have an option not to go to work, ever. You just have to go to work. You are looking at getting fired. If you don't show up and you don't call in and you don't make arrangements in nursing, it's called a no call, no show. You can be fired immediately for that, and you will not get a good reference. So look at your life right now before you get into the working world as a testing ground, as a testing environment for you to practice being in the working world. It's the best thing to do, because what you're doing is you are setting yourself up for good practices once you get a job. Okay? It never stops. It never stops. Perfect attendance is a requirement once you get out of college, once you get out of high school. It's no longer an option. It's a lot of times it's it's a surprise to a lot of people. It just hits home at some point, and you realize I don't really have an option anymore to be late. I have to go, and I have to be there on time, every day, for the rest of my working life. I guess I'll just give a little blurb out to the entrepreneurial side. One of the easiest ways, if you're looking for an easy way to make money on the entrepreneurial side, I'd probably say that the easiest way to make money is in real estate. There's a moderate amount of risk, a very low amount of risk. The risk would be having vacancies and taxes and having a house burned down. If you have good insurance, the risk is generally not there. You generally don't have any risk. The barrier to entry is lots and lots of money. You have to have lots of money to be in real estate, generally, if you're going to be like on the renter side. An easy way to do real estate is to just buy a bunch of houses and rent them out. There are rental management companies, and all you have to do is pay them a monthly fee, and then you get the residual. So, let's say that you have $1 million. Maybe you won the lottery or whatever, the lottery of life, and you buy, I don't know, $100,000 units, and you own them outright. You don't have to worry about paying a mortgage. Or, you buy a couple houses with a mortgage, with maybe a jumbo loan, and you rent them out. Once you own them outright, your overhead is very low. All you have to pay for is, like, if there's an emergency, if one of the appliances goes out, and you have to pay for your management company, unless you want to be a slumlord and manage everything yourself, which, it's not really the best way to go, honestly. I've heard somewhere 8% is your expected net take-home pay. So, if you get enough money that you can make 8% work as an income, you're set for life. Let's say that you have $1 million. 8% of $1 million is $80,000. So that would be your expected take-home net pay if you had $1 million worth of real estate. And from what I've seen, generally, you're talking about paying for your management company, having some backup money for emergencies, paying your insurance, etc. Now, I'm not sure if that counts into having mortgages on them or not, but generally speaking, if you can get $1 million and you can buy $1 million worth of real estate and rent it out, you're set for life. $80,000 a year, net take-home pay. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? So if you're looking for an easy way to do entrepreneurship and you have a bunch of money, that's the best way to go. Retirement, you get $1 million and you can retire off $80,000 a year. I mean, let's be honest. So that's probably the easiest way to have a guaranteed income for life, in my opinion. And you can take that by half. You have $500,000. You have $500,000 in real estate. 8% of that, take half of that, and so $40,000. Can you live on $40,000 a year? I could. So that's in my opinion the best way to go if you're looking to do entrepreneurship. So think about it this way: if you can work your ass off, get enough cash to be able to buy that much real estate, you can be set for life, and you can never have to work for anybody ever again. You can actually employ people, which is interesting. You can employ people. You're employing that management company. Real estate's a great way to do it. So anyway, that's just a little blurb, just a little idea. Think about it. If let's say that you get, in my case, let's say I get a nursing license. It's really not hard for me to make $100,000. It's really not hard. It depends on how much I work and who I work for, and what their pay scheme is. So if I'm working overtime, let's say that I make $40 an hour, right? If I'm making $40 an hour and I work overtime, that's $60 an hour gross, given it's gross. But I'm making $60 an hour for every overtime hour that I work. Okay, that's pretty good money. So let's say that I work overtime a lot, and let's say that I'm making, I don't know, $14,000 a month. I've done that. $14,000 a month in gross income. Not hard to do. If you are single, if you're single and you have, no other responsibilities, and you put your ass to work and you work constantly as much as you can, and you're kicking it. You're putting all your money away. You're not living extravagantly, but you're not living, cheaply either. You put all that money away. Let's say that you're able to put away $100,000 a year. 5 years, and you could be putting all that money into real estate, just as an example. You could go into the stock market too, but let's say that to get guaranteed income, you put all that money into real estate, you rent it out. You could have some vacancies here and there, but by and large, 8%. Let's just expect an 8% gain every year. You're talking about being set for life. So if you get your ass to the grindstone and you make as much money as you can possibly make, you get a good barrier to entry job, because that's where the money is. And then you go where the money is, and then you just put all your money away, and then you're able to put that money into something, say for example, real estate, or starting a business, or starting a franchise, or whatever. You'll be set for life. That's basically the equation, if you will. Get as much money as you can. Get all that money together. Because basically, to be an investor, you have to have a shit ton of money to make any kind of money with that money. Okay? It doesn't take money to make money. If you're going to make money from money, it takes a shit ton of money to make money. So that's essentially how that works. So I hope this was interesting, and I hope this was helpful, maybe, to somebody who really doesn't have a good concept about how making money works. So with that, I'll go ahead and end this broadcast. I hope somebody found this interesting, and I hope that it was enjoyable to listen to. Thanks for listening.